Here we are, Joe Cioffi, Fios 1 News, Long Island, and Fios 1 News, New Jersey.
And Joe Rao, Fios 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley, sitting here this evening wearing my New York Met tie, which didn't work today, unfortunately.
Oh, did they lose?
They lost.
Oh, what was
they
the
lost
final?
At City Field. I think it was 4-0. And you know, the funny thing is, driving into work today, Noah Syndergaard had a no-hitter, but because he let up a run on a couple of walks and an error or sacrifice, and it's tough when you look up on the scoreboard and you see the opposing team ahead of you and they haven't even gotten a hit. That was the kind of day the Mets had today.
Gotcha. All right, so we are leaving the desert, Joe. We were talking yesterday at this time, those ridiculously relative humidity levels that were down under 15%.
Right.
And today they were a little higher. It was, I think they were in the 20% range.
Yeah.
But that's over with now because we've got this onshore flow and this warm front that's going to come up from the south. So get ready for the raw and bone-chilling cold, I guess, for Friday.
Well,
relatively speaking.
As I just mentioned with our news anchor on the Hudson Valley, Mike Gilliam, and trying to, assure all of our Fios 1 viewers in the Lower Hudson Valley, the weekend is going to be okay, at least from this vantage point. It looks all right. The only problem is you're going to have to get through Friday, and Friday isn't going to be pretty at all. It's going to remind you a lot more of November as opposed to early April.
I've been describing the weekend as decent.
Decent, yeah.
I think decent is a good word.
But we're at that time of the year where if you add just enough sunshine, the temperature will immediately react and go poof.
Yeah, it reflexively wants to go into the 60s now.
So now if you wake up, as I said with Mike, if you wake up early enough on Saturday morning, look out your window, and it's still kind of drab and dreary, and there may even still be a little bit of light precipitation falling. Don't get upset, because the way things are looking, the atmosphere should dry out very quickly during the morning hours, and by afternoon we should have at least partial sunshine. And again, once the sun comes out, boom, up will go the temperatures back up into the 60s. Whereas tomorrow, Joe, some places may have a tough time, especially in the Hudson Valley, getting above 40.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough call for you. Russ Fergala is on. Nice to see you there, Russ. And Wayne, Tony, Anthony Robertson is on as well. He's one of my top fans, and also he's one of my Facebook supporters. So I wanted to say hi to him and to Lisa Marie Nieves, also a top fan and one of my Facebook supporters. Do you know what today is, Joe?
Today is the 4th of April.
Okay, it's the 45th anniversary of...
The 45th anniversary.
Yeah, so let's go back to April 4th, 1974.
April 4th, 1974.
Mary Tyler Moore was on. Okay. The Bob Newhart show. Carol Burnett.
Was this a super outbreak of...
the super outbreak.
Tornadoes.
Yeah, and I did this on my YouTube show tonight, and I figured let's do it here for the Facebook folks, because it was pretty interesting.
And I remember the one town that got destroyed out of that, which starts, believe it or not, with the letter X.
Yes.
It was Xenia, right?
Xenia, Ohio. This is considered, even though there was an outbreak, I believe, in 2011, I'm getting to the point where this is really kind of funny. I used to be so good with just remembering. I would read and remember stats. Can't do that anymore. I wrote all the stats down, okay, because I wanted to remember them. I forgot the sheet of paper in the other room. All right, so one of the things that I have said over and over again, I'm going to say it again, as far as our National Weather Service goes, there is so much stuff available for weather junkies that you will have a field day. So the Weather Service does an absolutely spectacular job, not just in providing all these different tools that you can look at, but also in going back and looking at events of the past. And this super outbreak is considered, even though there were over 300 tornadoes, I believe, that was produced at an outbreak in 2011, this one is considered the strongest outbreak observed in U.S. weather history.
Right.
148 tornadoes, but there were 30 tornadoes that were either F4s or F5s, and 95 tornadoes that were rated F2s or stronger.
You know what,
this was an incredible outbreak.
And you know what the scary thing about this to me is that this all seemed to happen maybe 20 years ago or 25 years ago. That's 45 years ago.
Yep.
Oh my God.
It was a long, long time ago.
And this was at a time let's point out that today, in today's society and in today's way of covering things, the mainstream media, any kind of weather event, if you get like 15 or 10 or 5 tornadoes occurring in any one spot, that'll launch that toward the top of the national news. They'll talk about the outbreak of severe weather. This happened in a time when weather really didn't get the coverage that it gets now.
No, you're right.
And this took over the weather headlines for a couple of days. Don't forget, 1974, now a lot of the coverage was about Watergate. We were coming up toward the end of the presidency of Richard Nixon, and virtually every day on the news, the national news, always led off with something about Richard Nixon or about the Nixon presidency or about Watergate or whatever. Suddenly, all of that got pushed aside for a few days because this was a major, major event talking about these tornadoes and the destruction. And again, that one town, Xenia, Ohio,
and here's I just brought the on that website page, and I'll put the link up in the chat for those of you who would like to look further. They have plotted the track of every single tornado.
So this is number 37.
This is number 37,
oh.
And there was the numbers that you see here: 3, 5, 4, 2, 2, 0. That's the tornado scale strength,
right?
The Fujiwara strength. The Xenia tornado was a 5, and actually just outside of Cincinnati in Slayer, later that evening, there was another F5 tornado, and going through all this area in the Ohio Valley and then in Point South, it's just amazing to see all these tornado tracks going down to Tennessee and Alabama. Look at this track of this one caught my eye. There's tornado 103. This is down in Alabama, and I mean, look at the length. This is going through several counties here. Wound up strengthening to an F4 tornado,
right.
And then until it died out once it moved far enough north into to Cullman. And then look at 101. Started back somewhere in Mississippi, and then moved northeastward, and at one point becomes an F5 tornado. I don't know how to pronounce that. G-U-I-N. Is that Guin? And I can't see from this map what state that is, if it's in Alabama or in the or in Mississippi.
Well, Mississippi would be, I think it would be Mississippi. Crossed over Mississippi, and then continued north and east up toward Huntsville, Alabama.
Right, and it's still
is to the west.
It's still it dies out, and then a new one forms.
That was 102.
102 that goes through Huntsville, and then another one. You have 96 and 98 that impacted near Athens. I mean, this is just incredible. All these different tornadoes that were cited. How many of them were the F3s, F4s? Just insane.
And the interesting thing also about this, again, let's remember this is 45 years ago, is that it was very rare to see film. The television stations at that time, the late 73 to early 1974, they were making the transition from film to videotape. And we're so used to seeing things now, videos of this and that. And of course, today, everybody, whenever there's a tornado outbreak, breaks out their cell phone. But there weren't too many video views, even in this super outbreak of tornadic activity.
And there are some that are there on that page. I'm going to I'll put the link up, as I said. But first, I did also find this is what the actual hand-drawn surface map looked like during that day. Joe, that was a 986 millibar cyclone in northeastern Missouri, and you had dew points in the 70s flooding into the Gulf states and on northward into Tennessee. I mean, this was really supercharged tropical air surging out, very juicy. And then behind it, you had temperatures that I can read off here. This is a hand plotted map in the 20s and 30s, coming down into the Dakotas and into Nebraska and Kansas. I mean, that was a pretty decent shot of cold air being drawn down behind it.
Now here, you could tell this was an old map, an old hand-drawn map, because notice they actually used to signify the strength of the frontal systems. This is a 228 warm front. Anything like an 8, and here's a 487 cold front.
Yeah.
So I mean, this warm front and this cold front was supercharged. This was a very sharp line to delineate. And I think here they actually had an indication of the squall line here, that 780 line. It was just incredible. It was just an amazing. I think the last time, and you talk about a legendary tornadic outbreak or tornado, the Tri-City, or I think it was the Tri-County tornado that occurred in Tennessee in 1925, and that was just one tornado. And here you had this outbreak of over 100 tornadoes, and more than a few probably were something approaching or even rivaling that 1925 storm. It was just unbelievable.
There hasn't been the Moore, Oklahoma tornado in 2013, I think, was the last F5 tornado. They're just very rare events, so there hasn't been one in a while. And normally in the United States, I was looking at the stats over the last few years. The average number of tornadoes in the United States over a course of a year is about 1,260, and we were a bit below. We were about 10% below normal last year, and we've been running most years in the last 5 or 6 years have actually seen below average activity.
Right.
You have to go back. I believe it was 2002. In the last 20 years, that was the most active one that had over 2,000. Also, when I was doing the research, you have to watch out how do you there's reported tornadoes, a number for reported tornadoes, and a number for confirmed tornadoes.
Right.
There's two sets of stats. Anyhow, just wanted to share that with everybody. In the meantime, tonight, where we do have severe weather is across parts of the Gulf states, the Central Gulf. The Storm Prediction Center has this at a slight risk for severe weather. This is not what we're getting. We're getting the rain area that's breaking out up to the north across Indiana and Illinois. And in the meanwhile, this evening, as of 9:35 Eastern Time, there's nothing close. So we're going to be fine for the overnight. And I think the morning commute tomorrow should be okay.
Right. I said for the Hudson Valley, I timed this out at any time from 11 a.m. To possibly as late as 2 p.m., and the question that still hovers over our heads is in terms of whether or not when the initial bit of precipitation arrives, will it come just in the form of light rain, or would it be in the form of a little bit of wet snow or sleet? And even if it does come in the form of wet snow
here's
or
sleet, the GFS tomorrow morning.
Right.
And this is what it sees. There could be some wet snow or sleet in the mix.
But the thing I want to stress is that it's not going to accumulate. It's nothing that you have to worry about in terms of potential icing or glazing of the roadways, but it's just something that's a curiosity more than anything else, that here we are, tomorrow's the 5th of April, and we're still talking about this type of activity occurring. And of course, it's not unknown that we see even sticking snow.
Not at all. In the last few winters or more,
but
they've been extended into April. People do tend to shut it off. People tend to shut it off around mid-March 1st.
Right. And then people who will look out the window tomorrow, oh my God, it's snowing.
Yes.
That kind of thing. All right, it might do that if you happen to live in just the right spot, but again, it's not going to last very long.
Right.
And by the end of the day, it's just going to be a dank, dreary, chilly rain.
Now, if you're upstate, if you're up well north of 84, maybe in some elevated areas, some grassy surfaces might see a little bit of snow. I've had people message me today that they're getting alerts on their phone from some of their weather apps, not mine, that are telling them that they're going to get 6 inches plus 6 inches of snow, 2 to 4 inches of snow. Stop, okay? Really, stop. I just don't see how that's going to happen, even in some elevated areas.
And the question here, where the positioning of the warm front, it's not out of the question that tomorrow night, after a day where, let's say, we're struggling to make it above 40, that we might see the temperatures level off and actually begin to rise some after midnight tomorrow night or toward daybreak on Saturday morning. So,
now, I think it's Saturday and Sunday, decent. Morning clouds to sunshine on Saturday. Sunshine to afternoon clouds on Sunday.
Right.
And both day sides should be dry, so you don't have to worry about any precip.
Right.
And then the next weather system sets up for Sunday night and Monday. Similar to this, Joe, except that it's a little warmer ahead of it, and the onshore flow, the high that's coming down is coming down further to the northeast. So it's going to be a matter of struggling that warm front through here on Monday. So I'm thinking showers and then the cold front comes through and maybe a shower or thunderstorm Monday late afternoon and evening. Tuesday might be the day. Tuesday may be the day where we could see sunshine and temperatures going to 70 or better in most places, including coastal areas.
Right.
That was my feeling.
Well, I played it a little well, because you and I you know that I asked you, all right, so what do you think about Tuesday? And you've got Long Island and all of New Jersey, and that's quite a bit of real estate. Meanwhile, I've got places that are up to the north that probably will warm up, but I just decided at this early juncture.
Well, it's a fight,
60,
and you know what?
65, but it could very well reach 70 or whatever. But we still have time to
clouds. How much cloud cover? How much sun is there going to be? There's another front that comes through late in the day on Tuesday. By the way, the overall profile as far as the blocking pattern, and we're going to have to pay attention to this from model run to model run is going to change. So it looks a little less dire here from the standpoint of a prolonged period of clouds and rain, like was being pictured a few days ago. But I'm a little bit nervous with regards to the overall forecast for early next week, because we've got this block that's developing over Greenland, and if it winds up being stronger or a little further left or further right or whatever change is going to make, it could impact the weather going forward beyond Monday. So we're going to be cautiously optimistic that we're going to dry out on Tuesday, but I'm not I'm not 100% sold on it yet.
Right. And again, that is a major block. And we talked about it at length yesterday about how a number of our viewers were saying, where was this in January or February? Those of you snow lovers out there. Well, that's the way things go sometimes.
And spring blocks are much more common than blocks in the wintertime.
Right.
All right, so just running through the folks on the chat tonight. Nice to see everybody on board tonight, as always. The regulars are back, and a few folks that seem to be new to the board, which is great too. Do tornadoes generally move from southeast to northeast?
From southeast
you mean
to
southwest to northeast?
Southwest to northeast. That's the usual.
Yeah.
They're usually driven along by that general flow.
Yeah, pretty much.
Unless you happen to have a backdoor warm front or something.
Stop. Frank LaSalandra wants snow in Vermont just one more time. Well, you'll get a little bit up there, up in northern New England out of this. I don't know if it's going to amount to much. Of course, in Maine, I know they got winter weather advisories up for northern Maine. Again, reminder, folks, I did put that Weather Service link up there on the chat. It's scroll down. It's somewhere in the middle there, and I'll add it to the information of the live stream after we're done.
Of course, up in Maine, we'll be approaching usually from...
Yeah, Amy Bellafiore Hogan is in Maine, and she says, no, we are not out in the clear here in Maine until almost May.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Usually from about the middle part of April till early May, it's what they sometimes refer to up there as mud season. It just is very hard for them to break out, whereas the rest of New England will dry out and clear out. And this year, Joe, I think Caribou in January broke their all-time snow record.
I think January and February.
And February, too. So
it's
going to be a while to get rid of that stuff up there in the hinterlands.
Let's see. Scott Briller pointing out there was very little warning. With the warning systems were different back. Maybe not necessarily little warning, but the warning systems were so much different back then in '74.
Right.
You know what? I could hardly remember even a severe thunderstorm watch until maybe sometime in the mid '70s.
Yeah.
They just weren't. You didn't hear about this sort of stuff.
They did have weather radios back then, but the weather radios were very basic. If you wanted the weather, you had to push the button on the radio, and you get the forecast. They did not have the alert system that they have now, where your radio can go off and start like a siren or whatever to alert you to that. That was non-existent back.
Or of course, now with our mobile devices, and we get We get the alerts on the mobile devices.
Forget about it. It's so much different than
it
now
sure
as opposed
is.
to then.
All right, so look, we got to wrap it up here, folks. Thanks for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Joe and I will be here tomorrow night to wrap up the week and take you into the weekend and hold your hand through the raw, rainy Friday night that it will be. And I'm just trying to think if is there anything else. No,
I'm just looking forward to getting through tomorrow and tomorrow night, and then comes the weekend.
Yeah, I want to do a little fishing this weekend.
Yeah.
All right, I'm at the top of the hour of FiOS 1 News, Long Island and New Jersey.
And I'm at the top of the hour. If you are fortunate enough to have Verizon FiOS 1 in the lower Hudson Valley, moi will be there to update you on all the weather come 10 o'clock tonight. And tomorrow morning, it's
His Eminence, Brian Fitzgerald, covering Long Island, New Jersey, and Hudson Valley. And then Mr. Green and Ms. Borer will be here for the afternoon run.
And then you and I will be here tomorrow in the dull, dank, dreary, depressing gloom of Friday.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.